Okay. Now, in our previous lecture, we were talking about Al-Biruni's India, and we had seen his ideas on Indian society. What are the important takeaways? क्या क्या बताया society के बारे में इसने? It was caste-ridden, hierarchical, closed society operating on the basis of notions such as purity and pollution. It was Brahmin dominated. And Vaishyas enjoyed a social status that was almost the same as the Shudras. This was a period of the proliferation of castes and rising untouchability. The status of women was severely degraded. The social outlook was insular in nature, leading to stagnation of knowledge and learning. There was a wide gap in the socio-economic status of different communities. There was a great deal of inequality. Temples, according to Al-Biruni, were hoarding wealth. On the other hand, the smaller, relatively weaker Rajput states neither had the capability to maintain large forces, nor did the prevailing feudal system allow them to do so. This resulted in frequent foreign invasions. So the society was weakened from within, it was rotten to its core, and therefore external shocks को ये withstand नहीं कर पाया. ठीक है? This is what Al-Biruni observes about Indian society. Now, religion and philosophy. One of the areas of Al-Biruni's expertise was the field of theology, that is the study of religion, right? For forming his views on Indian religion and philosophy, Al-Biruni depended on which kinds of sources? Religious Sanskrit literature. Okay? Now, Sanskrit literature belongs to which doctrine? Brahmanical, right? So, largely Hindu faith को इसने discuss किया है. Before we move any further, we should know about the specific pieces of literature that he refers to. Write down. Al-Biruni extensively quotes from the Patanjali, Purans, and the Sankhya school, of philosophy. full stop. He was familiar with the Upanishads and the Bhagavad Gita. Full stop. Further, he depended upon oral conversations with Brahmins for forming his religious views. For forming his religious views. Right. So, what are the important themes that Al-Biruni discusses while talking about Indian religion and philosophy? किन किन चीजों के बारे में बात करी होगी उसने? रिलीजियस फिलॉसफी अगर डिस्कस करना है तो क्या पैरामीटर्स पे डिस्कस कर सकते हो? The idea of God, what is his nature, what is his role, right? तो इसके ऊपर बात हो सकती है. What else? The idea of salvation, the idea of transmigration of soul, the correlation between moksha, that is salvation, and action, that is karma. इसके बारे में बात हो सकती है. The presence, existence and nature of the ideas of paradise and hell, right? स्वर्ग, नर्क, etc. इसके बारे में बात हो सकती है. Then different groups of intellectuals or different classes having different ideas regarding various philosophical concepts. For example, one school of philosophy may define God in a particular manner. One school of philosophy may have some unique ideas regarding the way to attain salvation. वो अलग दूसरी intellectual community से different हो सकता है. Further, the various classes, the elites and the commoners may have differing ideas regarding God. उनका how to worship वो भी different हो सकता है. The way in which they perceive salvation can be achieved, that can also be different. And this is what Al-Biruni highlights. ठीक है? Further, a comparison may be drawn between Indian religion and philosophy and religion and philosophy of other civilizations also. So these are the things that Al-Biruni has talked about. सबसे पहले किसके बारे में बात करी उसने? God, the nature of God, what is his role? So write down. According to Al-Biruni, Hindus refer to God as Ishwar, full stop. Next point. He believed that, they believe that God is one, eternal and infinite. ठीक है? Next point. He further points out the unity of the Hindu Holy Trinity. The Hindu Holy Trinity. Holy Trinity of Hindu gods कौन-कौन? Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh, the creator, sustainer and destroyer. अच्छा, तो ये जो ideas हैं that God is one, God is infinite, God is eternal, that तीन नहीं है एक ही है, ये ideas किसी और major religion से similar हैं? Essentially these are the ideas of monotheism, right? And उस समय कौन सा और इंपॉर्टेंट मोनोथियस्टिक फेथ दुनिया में इमर्ज हो रहा था, एक्सपैंड कर रहा था? Islam, right? Al-Biruni was also a subscriber of that faith, so it was natural for him to draw a comparison between the two. Okay, write down next point. Al-Biruni underscores monotheism as the essential feature of Upanishadic thought. As the essential feature of Upanishadic thought, and compares it to the Islamic idea of monotheism. अब कुछ उसको सिमिलैरिटीज दिखी, कुछ डिफरेंसेस दिखी. ठीक है, सिमिलैरिटीज नंबर 1, बिलीफ इन a single supreme God number 2, the idea that everything including humans are created by him. Number 3, the concept of apocalypse and the final judgment. ठीक है, so within Hinduism it is known as pralay, apocalypse, the final destruction of the universe, and in Islam it is called Qayamat. और दोनों बार God is going to judge human beings. That is the idea. Next, the shared concept of heaven and hell. Shared concept of heaven and hell. ठीक है, so these are some of the major similarities between the two. Next, dissimilarities. सबसे बड़ा डिसिमिलैरिटी क्या है? The concept of salvation. Write down the concept of salvation. While Islam rejects the possibility of union between the soul and God, this union is the essence of the Hindu concept of moksha. ठीक है, तो इस्लामिक फिलॉसफी को अगर आपको कैटेगराइज करना हो तो कैसे कैटेगराइज करोगे? नॉन डुअलिस्टिक और डुअलिस्टिक? डुअलिस्टिक, गॉड एंड मैन or God and soul are considered to be completely distinct from each other. While God is the creator, humans are his creation. there is no possibility or there is no possible scenario where humans का जो spiritual status है वो इतना elevate हो जाए that it may become one with God. Whereas this very thing is the essence of the Hindu idea of moksha. कि अपने spiritual status को इतना elevate कीजिए that your आत्मा is finally indistinct from परमात्मा, and दोनों में जब कोई difference नहीं रह जाएगा, they are going to become part of the same whole. Your आत्मा gets absorbed into the परमात्मा. ठीक है, तो एक major difference तो ये हो गया, right? Now, while highlighting this difference, Al-Biruni also compares it, also draws the similarities between the Hindu concept of moksha and the salvation concept of another important sect within Islam. इसकी बात कर रहे हैं. One where the unity of being is emphasized upon. Sufism, ठीक है? So write down सब point इसमें. At the same time, comma, Al-Biruni emphasizes upon the similarity of moksha and the Sufi concept. सूफिज्म में इस यूनिटी को क्या बोलते हैं? वहादत अल वजूद. एंड द सूफी कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ वहादत अल वजूद, दैट इज यूनिटी ऑफ बीइंग. ठीक है, तो एक हमने डिफरेंस देखा है इन दी डिफरिंग कॉन्सेप्शंस ऑफ सैल्वेशन, मोक्षा. ठीक है, दूसरा देखो, दूसरा क्या है? the way in which salvation is to be achieved. ठीक है, तो while इस्लाम में ह्यूमंस को फ्री विल तो दी गई है, फेट कौन डिफाइन करता है? God himself. So human beings have no control over their fate. Human beings are imagined almost like puppets in the hands of God. Whereas in Hinduism, what is the factor which determines the final possibility of salvation? Action, karma. ठीक है, so write down. Another important difference is the importance of action in determining the fate of the individual soul. Full stop. Subpoint. While both religions accept that humans enjoy free will, comma, under Islam, the final fate depends upon divine agency solely. Divine agency solely. Full stop. Solely. केवल और केवल भगवान डिसाइड करेगा. Full stop. Next sub point. On the other hand, comma, within Hinduism, within Hinduism, importance is given to individual action, to individual action, that is karma. ठीक है, तो ये हो गया ideas regarding God and the similarities and differences between Islamic and Indian conceptions of religion. Next topic that he talks about, the disparity or the differences between the elite concept of religion and the common concept of religion. दोनों सेम है या दोनों अलग अलग हैं? Both are different. So write down. Next main point. Al-Biruni also points out that the religious beliefs of the educated class are different from those of the uneducated. From those of the uneducated. ठीक है, क्या बोलता है यहां पर? जो एजुकेटेड सेक्शंस हैं वो क्या करते हैं? Without getting bogged down by the minutiae of religious ritualism, they try to define general concepts and rules about God and human behavior. ठीक है, वो philosophical approach लेते हैं. Whereas uneducated sections क्या करते हैं? They take a formulaic approach, right? They base their possibility of attaining salvation, earning religious merit upon some irrational rituals, ठीक है, such as idol worship, performance of yagyas in order to purify the soul, etc. वो ये सारी चीजें कर रहे हैं. One Al-Biruni appreciates, the second Al-Biruni condemns. किसको appreciate करेगा? जो एजुकेटेड क्लास के ओपिनियंस है उनको अप्रिशिएट करता है, बिकॉज दे आर रैशनल इन नेचर, व्हाइल ही कंडेम्स दोज ऑफ द अनएजुकेटेड क्लासेस. राइट डाउन. अल-बिरूनी सब पॉइंट में लिख सकते हो. अल-बिरूनी observes that the educated generally concern themselves in philosophical pursuits to conceive rational ideas in philosophical pursuits, to conceive rational ideas and define general principles regarding God. Full stop. He appreciates this rational approach. Next sub point. On the other hand, the uneducated masses are happy with the derived rules masses are happy with the derived rules which they don't understand. ठीक है, तो जो elite sections हैं, they define some general principles ना, and based on these general principles they give religious teachings to the uneducated masses, and वो कभी इसको question करते हैं? नहीं करते हैं, they blindly accept it, full stop. This leads to irrational and superstitious practices that Al-Biruni condemns. That Al-Biruni condemns. ठीक है? Now, was Al-Biruni familiar with the different schools of Indian philosophy or not? Yes, he was. First of all, he has written about Sankhya and Yoga philosophy at length. He also seems to be familiar with other concepts such as the Vaisheshika philosophy, Vedanta, etc. Write down. Next point, next main point. Al-Biruni was also familiar with the different Indian philosophical systems. Full stop. He has written in detail about the Sankhya and Yoga philosophies. Sankhya and Yoga philosophies. Especially while trying to explain the Hindu concept of creation. Creation मतलब origin of the universe. ठीक है? Hindu concept of creation and the correlation between matter and soul. Between matter and soul. ठीक है? Next sub point. He was also familiar with other philosophies such as the Vaisheshika and Vedanta. Vaisheshika and Vedanta. ठीक है? So he had good functional knowledge of Indian philosophies. He understood the Indian concepts of creation, God, transmigration of soul, salvation, and the way to achieve it. Next main point लिखो. Al-Biruni also outlined the Indian concepts of paradise and hell. Much of this knowledge comes from the Purans, especially the Vishnu Puran, right? And क्या बोलता है, एक स्वर्ग या एक नरक होता है या कई सारे स्वर्ग और नरक होते हैं? Multiple swargs and narks, multiple paradises and hells. Write down. Based on the Vishnu Puran, he concludes that Indians believe in a large number of Indians believe in a large number of other worlds. Other worlds. So stop. The general term used for paradise क्या है? स्वर्लोक. ठीक है? Write down. Sub point. The general term used for paradise is Swarlok. And क्या होता है ये पैराडाइज? One where the individual exists in a state of permanent bliss, enjoyment. ठीक है? So write down. And is characterized by a state of permanent bliss. A state of permanent bliss. Why are some individuals granted entry into this paradise while others are denied? Because of their action, because of their previous good deeds. Write down. Entry is regulated. Same point. Entry is regulated on the basis of previous deeds. Previous deeds. Deeds. Previous actions. Okay. On the other hand, next point. On the other hand, sins को कैसे पनिश किया जाता है? By either giving a person a particular period of time in a different category of hell, depending on the category of sin, or by punishing them to transmigrate into a lower life form. इस जन्म में अगर पाप करोगे तो अगले जन्म में हो सकता है भेड़ बकरी बन के आओ, हो सकता है कोई कीड़ा बन के आओ. This kind of thing. Write down. On the other hand, sins are punished either with confinement in a large variety of hells, or by being reborn as a lower life form. As a lower life form. ठीक है? These are his thoughts on Indian religion. Apart from that, some general observations he made regarding the Indian religious practices and customs. क्या क्या observe करता है? Indians in general are idol worshippers. They thronged to temples, especially during religious occasions, right? And apart from worship in temples में और भी चीजें होती हैं. For example, music and dance performance. So all these things he observes. Further, some Indians also worship fire and sun. So this also he observes. Further, some Indians celebrate some categories of festivals while others do not. Okay, so he does not give the picture of a unified Indian society. So write down. Apart from these, Al-Biruni also makes some general observations regarding religious practice. A, B, C करके. A, Indians worshipped idols, which Al-Biruni condemns as irrational and superstitious. Full stop. Next sub point. Holy pilgrimage. Holy pilgrimage is performed by Indians to earn religious merit. To earn religious merit. Number 3. Temples are the most important site of religious activity. Are the most important site of religious activity. Next, number 4. Idol worshipping Indians believe in a multitude of gods. Believe in a multitude of gods. But not all gods are worshipped by all Indians. Full stop. Next sub point. Festivals are celebrated with much enthusiasm. And important festivals include Vasant, Guru Tritya, and second Chaitra. Right. So this is also a spring festival only. Second Chaitra. वसंत और सेकंड चैत्र दोनों स्प्रिंग फेस्टिवल्स हैं. सेकंड चैत्र सेलिब्रेटेड प्राइमरीली इन Kashmir. Okay. So these are Al-Biruni's views regarding Indian religion and philosophy. Next, his views regarding Indian polity. Now, one thing that should be clear from the very beginning is that political developments were never the real focus for Al-Biruni. So most of the information that he gives us, we get from other sources as well. Further, while talking about Indian polity, he is not as concerned about the political divisions, political structure and conditions in India as he is about foreign invasions, the Ghaznavid invasions. तो lopsided account of Ghaznavid invasions ये देता है, लेकिन इंडियन कंडीशंस के ऊपर बहुत ज्यादा फोकस नहीं करता है. ठीक है. So from the perspective of polity, the Kitab-ul-Hind is not very important, but he does give us some details. ठीक है. So write down. Al-Biruni was not focused on political details, but still gives us some invasion. sorry, some information. Next point. He was the first to highlight the animosity between Indians and Turks. Between Indians and Turks. Full stop. Sub point. He accurately dates the sacking of Somnath by Mahmud of Ghazni. क्या डेट देता है? 1017 AD. Full stop. Next main point. He laments the widespread destruction caused due to the Turkish invasions. Full stop. सबसे ज्यादा दिक्कत इसको किस चीज से हो रही थी? That because of these Turkish invasions, local life had been disrupted, many kings had been uprooted, and they were unable to patronize learned men. तो इसको learned men से बात करनी थी. He wanted to learn about India, तो इसका काम मुश्किल हो गया. He remarked that because of these invasions, all the learned men were migrating further east into Indian territory. ठीक है? Write down. According to him, इसी point. According to him, this was causing the learned men of India to migrate eastward. ठीक है? Now, although he does not give much detail about dynasties of India proper, he does provide us with some details of the dynasty of Hindu rulers situated just to the south of the Ghaznavid kingdom early on. किस किंगडम की बात कर रहे हैं हम? किस डायनेस्टी की बात कर रहे हैं? पंजाब में रूल कर रहे थे दी शाही डायनेस्टी, दी हिंदू शाही डायनेस्टी. राइट डाउन. Al-Biruni also records the history of the Hindu Shahi rulers who faced the brunt of Ghaznavid invasions. Hindu Shahi rulers who faced the brunt of Ghaznavid invasions. Does he mention any other dynasties apart from this? Yes. So, although it is unlikely that he visited the regions controlled by these dynasties, he has talked about the dynasties of Kashmir, the Kalachuris, and even the Cholas. Okay? So, write down. Al-Biruni even mentions the dynasties of Kashmir, the Kalachuris, and the Cholas. Although it is unlikely that he visited their domains. ठीक है। नेक्स्ट, इंडियन जियोग्राफी। What were his sources for learning about Indian geography, the various regions in India, various landforms, important features, rivers, mountains? कैसे पता लग रहा था? Some places he may have visited personally, for others he was relying upon second-hand information, writings in various texts, conversation with other learned men. ठीक है? Write down. Al-Biruni combines personal observation and use of textual knowledge to discuss Indian geography. One of the important regions that he talks about is the मध्य देश, राइट? तो ये टर्म या ऐसे सिमिलर टर्म आपने पहले कभी सुना है? मध्य देश. Try to think about the Mauryan polity, provincial administration में मध्य प्रांत was the central province. किस रीजन, कौन सा रीजन था इंडिया का? मगध रीजन, राइट? हाउएवर अल-बिरूनी मध्य देश को किस रीजन से आइडेंटिफाई करता है? Kannauj and its surrounding region, the upper Ganga valley, right? What does this tell us? That the socio-economic and political center of North India had shifted from Magad up to the upper Ganga valley by this period. In fact, this transformation had been going on for a long period of time. With the establishment of Kannauj as Harsha's capital, ये transformation complete हो चुका था, and the importance of this region as Madhya Desh had only increased with the passage of time. ठीक है? So write down Madhya Desh. Al-Biruni calls the region around Kannauj as the Middle Kingdom, as the Middle Kingdom. क्या बोलता है? According to him, this region was politically important because in former times it produced great kings and heroes. इसके अलावा Al-Biruni also tells us, also provides us information regarding the distances between Kannauj and other important centers such as Mathura, Prayag, etc. Write down. Al-Biruni also provides us distances between Kannauj and other centers such as Mathura, Banaras, Prayag, Pataliputra, Kashmir and Ghazni. ठीक है, next point. He also talks about the various routes that were connecting different parts of the country. Write down. He also notes the important routes which connected India internally and also with frontier regions such as Gujarat, Malwa, Punjab, the deep south, Nepal and Tibet. ठीक है, next main point लिखो. He also mentions the islands of Southeast Asia and the China Sea. Full stop. Does it talk about Indian climate? Yes. Especially कौन सा season? Monsoon season के बारे में बात करते हैं. Write down. He has also described Indian climate as a mixture of extremes. Full stop. He has given special emphasis to the monsoon season. What does he call it? Varsha Kal, known as Varsha Kal. ठीक है. Does he talk about any important geographical features, rivers, etc., mountains? सबके बारे में बात करते हैं. Write down. He has also mentioned important rivers and mountains such as the Godavari, Krishna, Tungabhadra, Kaveri, Mahanadi, Narmada, Ganga, Yamuna, etc. Is all of this information factual in nature? No, some of it is mythological in nature also. For example, he mentions mythical mountains such as the Meru mountains, right? कभी सुना है कोई मेरू माउंटेन एक्चुअली मैप के ऊपर देखा है? नहीं. So this indicates that he was probably not aware between the of the differences between Indian mythology and actual Indian geography. क्या समझ में आता है? Did he actually visit these sites personally? नहीं, he probably read about them in some book. ठीक है? So write down. However, same में सब point. This information may not have been obtained through personal observation. Full stop. This is because he mentions some mythical landforms, such as Mount Meru, indicating his reliance upon religious scriptures. ठीक है, ये पॉइंट क्लियर है ना? Now, some unique aspects of Al-Biruni's writings regarding geography are, first of all, his study of different types of Indian soils and the impact that water flow has on this, right? So he studied the concept of erosion also, and through the action of flowing water on the various soil types, he has tried to come up with his own theories regarding landform formation. ज्योग्राफी में भी आप लोग ये सब पढ़ते होंगे कि हाउ वाटर इरोजन और डिपोजिशनल और इरोजनल लैंडफॉर्म्स आर फॉर्म्ड ड्यू टू फ्लूइड एक्शन ऑफ वाटर, राइट? ये भी यहाँ पे सिमिलर थ्योरीज के साथ एक्सपेरिमेंट कर रहा है. सो राइट डाउन. स्पेशली नेक्स्ट मेन पॉइंट, स्पेशली इंटरेस्टिंग आर Al-Biruni's ideas regarding water erosion and his theories regarding the formation of different landforms as a result of regarding the creation of different landforms as a result of such activity. ठीक है. Now, another very important topic that he talks about is his observation of marine fossils. In which part of the country? Marine fossils आपको जनरली कहाँ पे देखने के लिए मिलते हैं? कोस्टल रीजन्स में देखने के लिए मिलते हैं. बट ही मेंशंस देयर प्रेजेंस वेयर? हिमालयाज में. ठीक है. What does he conclude as a result? That at some point of time this region must have been underwater. This region must have been covered by water. तभी यहाँ पे snails पहुंचे हैं. Otherwise crustaceans and snails यहाँ पे कैसे आते? There is no possibility of them having crawled long distances over arid terrain to reach the mountains. ठीक है. So he is going to anticipate several यूरोपियन मॉडर्न जियोग्राफर्स. अल्फ्रेड वेगनर फॉर एग्जांपल आपने नाम सुना होगा. ही गिव्स द आइडिया ऑफ कॉन्टिनेंटल ड्रिफ्ट, सी फ्लोर स्प्रेडिंग, ये सारे आइडियाज देता है, राइट? द कॉन्टिनेंटल ड्रिफ्ट थ्योरी वो यहाँ पे आ जाएगा. द आइडिया that a tethys sea used to exist between the Indian landmass and the Eurasian landmass before they both collided with each other, resulting in the formation of the Himalayan mountains. उस आइडिया को एंटिसिपेट कर रहा है, राइट? So his geographical views are quite insightful in this regard. Write down. Another important observation made by him was that the Himalayan mountains must have been under the ocean at some point of time. At some point of time. Subpoint. He reached this conclusion after discovering marine fossils of seashells and snails in the Himalayas. In the Himalayas. ठीक है? So overall, what can we say about Al-Biruni's method of analyzing geographical information? Highly scientific and rational. Limitation क्या हो सकता है? His limited direct observation and dependence upon hearsay. ठीक है? So write down. Overall, next main point. Overall, comma, we can conclude that Al-Biruni's methodology for geographical study or geographical analysis is highly scientific and rational. Full stop. Subpoint. At the same time, comma, his over-reliance upon secondary sources or secondary information weakens his analysis. ठीक है? पॉलिटी हो गया, ज्योग्राफी हो गया. नाउ साइंस. Right? Al-Biruni has commented upon the status of science as a whole, and he has also surveyed the various sciences in great detail. उनके ऊपर जो important works है, the existing tradition of knowledge, how that knowledge is being transmitted, the idea of whether new research is being conducted in these areas or not, सबके बारे में बात किया है इसने. So write down. Al-Biruni had a natural interest in sciences and was among the earliest to study the Hindu sciences. Full stop. What is his opinion about Indian science? क्या बोलता है? It is a mixture of pearls and sour dates. He was greatly impressed by the high level of Indian knowledge regarding astronomy, mathematics, medicine, chemistry, etc. However, he also says that Indians religion और science के बीच में differentiate नहीं कर पाते हैं, right? They have lost this knack, resulting in superstitious beliefs and practices. Critical thinking अब उन्होंने छोड़ दिया है. That is what he says. Write down. Al-Biruni was highly impressed with the Indian knowledge of astronomy, mathematics, medicine, alchemy, etc. But also mentions that Indians mix up science with religion, resulting in numerous superstitions. Numerous superstitions. Full stop. Subpoint. Thus he describes Indian science as a mix of pearls and sour dates. Pearls and sour dates. Okay. Now, regarding the individual fields of study, एक एक करके हम डिस्कस करेंगे. एस्ट्रोनॉमी, मीटरोलॉजी, मैथमेटिक्स, अरिथमेटिक एक्सेट्रा. फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल, astronomy. Did he have access to Indian astronomical literature? Yes. So he talks about the Panchasiddhantika of Varamihir, the works of Aryabhatta, etc. Right? And what is his assessment of these works? क्या बोलता है? Is there any similarity between the Indian knowledge of astronomy and other civilizations' knowledge? Yes. तो ग्रीक ट्रेडिशन ऑफ एस्ट्रोनॉमी और इंडियन ट्रेडिशन ऑफ एस्ट्रोनॉमी में कई सारी similarities हैं. That is one thing that he points out. Second observation that he makes regarding astronomy, that all Indian astronomers are expected to be good astrologers as well. Right? Astrology क्या होता है? अच्छा, astronomy क्या होता है? पहले ये तो बताओ. The study of heavenly bodies, their position, their movement across the sky. Right? Astrology क्या होता है? Telling fortune, telling the future based upon the study of such movements. ठीक है? The position of various grahas and nakshatras. Okay? क्या observation किया है इसने? That all astronomers are also expected to be good astrologers. Why was this? क्यों? Because astrology was a very important religious concern for the masses. People were concerned about their future, not only in this world but in the next world. They had started associating the movement of heavenly bodies with the human fate, to deterministic concept of cosmology. ये emerge हो रहा था. And since astronomers already had the knowledge, they also became good astrologers. ठीक है? तो क्या हमने देखा था? That Indians mix up science with religion. So this was the result of that. Clear? Write down. Al-Biruni had access to a large body of Indian astronomical literature. Including the works of Varamihir, Brahmagupta, and Aryabhatta. Full stops. Full stop. Next point. He notes the similarities between Indian and Greek astronomy, including shared vocabulary, methods, and formulae. Full stop. Next point. He observes that Indians were aware of ABC करके A, the movements of the earth, that is rotation and revolution. B, the movements of the moon. C, the causes and duration of eclipses. Next, D है ना, calculation of the precise moment of equinoxes. Next, E, the elliptical nature of Earth's orbit around the sun. F, the factors responsible for the occurrence of different seasons. And G, the awareness that the earth was not a perfect sphere. Earth was not a perfect sphere. Okay? So they were aware of the polar as well as equatorial circumference of the earth. दोनों अलग अलग. ज्यादा कौन सा था? Equatorial. The earth is bulging at the equator. ठीक है? कितना लिखा है? F और G, H लिखो. H. Indians were aware of the method to calculate the Earth's circumference as well. The Earth's circumference as well. Indians were aware of the method to calculate the Earth's circumference as well. ठीक है? तो ये सारा इंफॉर्मेशन इंडियंस के पास था. What kind of calendar did Indians use? Solar calendar or lunar calendar? Lunar calendar use करते थे according to him. ठीक है? Each month consisting of 28 days, so different phases of the moon circulate across the night sky in over a period of 28 days. न्यू मून से लेकर के फुल मून एंड बैक. ठीक है. अच्छा, हाउ मेनी मंथ्स इन अ कैलेंडर ईयर? 12 months, denoted by 12 different zodiac signs. ठीक है. So write down. According to Al-Biruni, next main point. According to Al-Biruni, Indians used the lunar calendar with 12 months denoted by 12 zodiac signs, and each month having 28 days. Or did Indians have any idea of the solar calendar? हाँ या नहीं था? हाँ, Indians according to him were familiar with the solar calendar as well, but for religious purposes they were using the lunar calendar, and because religion or science में intermixing हो गया था, therefore the lunar calendar was more important. It was in general use also. ठीक है, so write down. At the same time, subpoint. At the same time, comma, Indians were also familiar with the solar calendar. However, it was not widely used. It was not widely used. ठीक है, और लास्ट मेन पॉइंट लिखो. Because of the tendency to mix religion with science, comma, astronomers in India were also expected to be good astrologers. ठीक है, तो ये हो गए Al-Biruni's views regarding Hindu astronomy, Indian astronomy. Next, Indian meteorology. क्या होता है ये? The system of study of the system of weights and measurements. ठीक है, क्या बताता है Al-Biruni? Did Indians have any standardized system? Standardization नहीं था, but a large number of units existed for weights, for distances of area measurement, for units of area measure, for units of distance measure, length measurement के लिए अलग अलग units यूज करते थे. Write down. Al-Biruni observes that Indians used several systems of measuring weights and distances. Full stop. He mentions units such as सुवर्ण, तोला, मापा, द्रोण, सुरपा, एटसेट्रा। ये दोनों weight and these three length के measures। ठीक है, नेक्स्ट पॉइंट, Al-Biruni also compares the Indian tola to the Arabic miktal, and also calculated the equivalent weight of the two, ठीक है, ये हो गया मीटरोलॉजी। नेक्स्ट, arithmetic and mathematics, first thing that he talks about the Indian number system, ठीक है, so write down, Al-Biruni talks about the presence of several numeral systems in India, including the binary, decimal, hexadecimal system, etc. तो टोटल कितने ऑर्डर्स ऑफ नंबर्स बताता है ये? He mentions 18 orders of numbers. So write down. He mentions a total of 18 different number systems. Regarding notation of the numbers, क्या बोलता है? Was a uniform system used or different systems were used in different regions? Different systems. Notation के लिए अलग-अलग systems, अलग-अलग regions. Write down. He also mentions the use of different systems of numerical notation and signage in different regions. Full stop. According to him, Indians had an advanced knowledge of mathematics. And geometry, which was used for practical astronomy as well as architecture. Were Indians aware of fractions? Yes. Did Indians know how to use the decimal? Yes. Did Indians have awareness of the zero? Yes. Were Indians aware of integers, numerical fractions, etc.? Yes. Did Indians know the method of calculating the value of pi? Yes. Were Indians familiar with the science of trigonometry? Yes. So write down. According to him, Indians knew how to use, sub point लिख लो. According to him, Indians knew how to use the zero, comma, decimal point, comma, fractions, comma, calculate the value of pi, comma, derive the various measurements of the sphere and circle, comma, use trigonometry to calculate distances, comma, create and solve cyclic and quadrilateral equations, etc. ठीक है, ये हो गया अरिथमेटिक एंड मैथमेटिक्स. नेक्स्ट, केमिस्ट्री. तो केमिस्ट्री अक्रॉस द वर्ल्ड कैसे इमर्ज हुआ? नाउ from the very beginning, intellectuals were trying to convert base metals such as lead or iron into precious metals such as gold or silver. ठीक है, ये कर लोगे तो सारी प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व. So they felt that the reaction of metals with various acids and compounds can help them to do this. Although ये करना possible तो नहीं है, but because of this experimentation, a lot of other scientific knowledge, chemical knowledge was gathered. अब ये जो pursuit होता है of trying to convert base metals into precious metals, that is known as alchemy. ठीक है, तो Al-Biruni was familiar with the Indian experiments on alchemy. Indians called it Rasayan Vidya, right? Now, although Indians had a rich body of knowledge regarding Rasayan Vidya, it was inferior to the knowledge that had by this point of time been accumulated by Islamic scholars of Western Asia. ठीक है, because India में जो knowledge है वो stagnate हो चुका था, and due to the mixing of religion and science, the Indian ideas regarding Rasayan Vidya had undergone further degradation. तो इंडियन अल्केमिस्ट को अल्बरूनी क्या कंसिडर करता है? सोर्सरर्स. और इंडियन केमिस्ट्री को क्या कंसिडर करता है? विचक्राफ्ट. ठीक है, तो ही ऑलमोस्ट इक्वेट्स इट विद मैजिक. तो ही डज नॉट कैटेगराइज एज अ फील्ड ऑफ साइंस. हाँ, साइंस तो है, लेकिन ऑल साइंटिफिक प्रिंसिपल्स हैव बीन पुट असाइड. ठीक है, नाउ इट इज अ मिक्सचर ऑफ मैजिक, सोर्सरी एंड विचक्राफ्ट. ट्रिकरी है. ठीक है, सो राइट डाउन. Al-Biruni mentions the Indian science of Rasayan Vidya primarily in the context of alchemy, primarily in the context of alchemy, full stop. However, he appears to be disgusted with Indian practitioners of alchemy and compares them to magicians and tricksters. To magicians and tricksters. ठीक है. Next, medicine. Now, Al-Biruni was familiar with the Charak Samhita, and on the basis of this, क्या conclude किया है इसने? Indians have advanced knowledge of medicine. They are familiar with the methods of identifying various ailments and also of treating them using medicinal herbs and aromatic herbs. उनका mixture से, ठीक है? Further, he talks about the Indian concept of human anatomy. क्या बोलता है? Indians believe that the human body is constituted from various elements and ailments का result, ailments का factor क्या होता है main? Imbalance between these various elements, right? He कैसे categorize किया है इसने Indian medicine को? As a scientific or unscientific pursuit? Highly rational and scientific, ठीक है? However, Al-Biruni was not familiar with the text Shushrut Samhita. तो इंडियन सर्जरी के बारे में कुछ बोलता है? नहीं बोलता है. Remains silent regarding this. Write down. Medicine. Al-Biruni was familiar with the Charak Samhita and other writings on Ayurveda. Full stop. According to him, Indians had an advanced sense of medical diagnosis and treatment full stop. He mentions the Indian concept of human physiology full stop. According to this, the human body is made up of different elements, and ailments are caused by these elements going out of balance. Different elements and ailments मतलब diseases, and diseases are caused by these elements going out of balance. Full stop. Next point. He praises the Indian medical system for being rational and scientific. For being rational and scientific. Full stop. Next point, write down. However, he does not seem to be familiar with the Sushrut Samhita and thus remains silent on Indian surgery. ठीक है. Now, Al-Biruni has also criticized Indian science and literature. क्या criticism किया है इसका? Stagnation. और stagnation के पीछे किसको blame किया है? जो elites हो उनको blame किया है. The superior sense of superior attitude of Indians, the Indian sense of superiority, insularity, उसको blame किया है. What else? The hypocrisy of the Brahmins, who he says know the truth but deliberately hide the truth from others, right? तो जो हमने पहले criticisms discuss किए थे ना, वो यहाँ पे भी आप apply कर सकते हो. ठीक है? तो write down. Al-Biruni has deeply criticized Indian science and learning which he believes to have stagnated. Full stop. For this he blames the arrogance, insularity and hypocrisy of Brahmins primarily. ठीक है? Criticism तो किया है. Does he write something good about Indian science? Yes. Next point, write down. At the same time, he openly admits the presence of highly learned scholars and philosophers in India. Full stop. He was also in awe of Indian expertise in constructing water structures such as tanks and step wells. क्या बोलता है ये? That Indian knowledge in this field is far superior than the knowledge of his own people. In fact, had he or was he to describe these Indian tanks and reservoirs to his own people, लोग उसको believe ही नहीं करेंगे कि ऐसा कभी exist भी कर सकता है. ठीक है? तो he freely admits this as well. Next point लिखो. Al-Biruni makes a serious allegation against Indian intellectuals. Allegation, ilzam लगाता है against Indian intellectuals. He blames them for deviating from the path of अल-हक. पहले बताया था अल-हक क्या, द आइडिया ऑफ ट्रूथफुलनेस टू ट्रूथ. ठीक है, दैट इज ट्रूथफुलनेस टू ट्रूथ. क्या बोलता है कि इंटेलेक्चुअल्स को सच पता है बट डिलिबरेटली ये बाकी दुनिया को झूठ झूठ बताते हैं इन ऑर्डर टू कीप देम मीक, in order to breed a culture of uncritical obedience. ठीक है, so write down. According to him, they are familiar with the truth, but deliberately hide it. Breeding a culture of ignorance, superstition and blind obedience. ठीक है, so these are his ideas regarding science. Geography हमने देख लिया, polity देख लिया, we have talked about his ideas regarding the society as well. Strengths हमने डिस्कस करी थी अल-बिरूनी की. क्या strengths थी? First of all, his methodology, his approach. Second, his reliance upon a large variety of Indian texts, conversation with the learned people of that period, his unbiased and critical approach, right? These were the strengths of Al-Biruni's writings. Now coming to the limitations of the Kitab-ul-Hind as a source of history. तो बताइए क्या लिमिटेशंस हैं? अल-बिरूनी खुद से ही कुछ बैरियर्स को आइडेंटिफाई करता है. ही हाइलाइट्स हिज ओन लिमिटेशंस इन ओवरकमिंग दीज बैरियर्स. किस तरह के लिमिटेशंस? First of all, he states that the Indian civilization and the Islamic civilization, the Indian religion and the Islamic religion are completely different. तो gulf between them is so wide कि उसको एक बार में ब्रिज करना almost impossible है. अब होता क्या है, your experiences define you. आपका consciousness, that is the result of the observations and experiences you have had since your formative years. This alters the way in which you perceive things, in the way in which you formulate thoughts. ठीक है, अब अगर दो अलग अलग सिविलाइजेशंस के लोग एक दूसरे की सिविलाइजेशंस में जाते हैं तो दे आर गोइंग टू यूज देयर ओन एनालिटिकल टूल्स informed by their own values and experiences to make observations in the foreign land, right? And इसकी वजह से होगा क्या, that कई सारी चीजें गलत इंटरप्रेट हो जाती हैं. ठीक है, तो अल-बिरूनी आइडेंटिफाइज दिस. फॉर एग्जांपल, एक और बैरियर आइडेंटिफाई करता है, क्या? द बैरियर ऑफ लैंग्वेज. ठीक है, एक और बैरियर आइडेंटिफाई करता है, क्या? द इंसुलैरिटी ऑफ द इंडियन इंटेलेक्चुअल्स, बात करने के लिए नहीं रेडी थे, राइट? तो बड़ी मेहनत करनी पड़ी, और उसके बाद भी मेनी ऑफ देम मेंटेन्ड एन arrogant attitude towards Al-Biruni. Al-Biruni himself recognizes all these limitations. Write down. तो हेडिंग डाला है ना, limitations of the Kitab-ul-Hind as a source of history. Al-Biruni discussed several limitations that he felt obstructed his understanding of India. Full stop. A B C करके लिखो. A, the language barrier. किताबुल हिंद किस लैंग्वेज में लिखा है उसने? अरबी में लिखा है, फारसी में नहीं, अरबी में लिखा है, राइट? He says that the Arabic language was very different from Sanskrit. So different, in fact, that literal translation between the two is not always possible, and some important concepts may be lost in translation. Write down. He points out. हाँ, उसी में. He points out that Arabic and Sanskrit are extremely different, and it is not always possible to accurately translate complex ideas and concepts. Full stop. B, religious and cultural barrier. Full stop. देखो इसमें. Al-Biruni says that the Indian and Islamic civilizations were radically different from each other. Full stop. As such, it was not easy to overcome his own cultural bias, while making observations and forming conclusions about India. C लिखो. C, insular attitude of Indians. Al-Biruni points out that Indians, especially the Brahmins, avoided contact with outsiders, thus limiting his access to important intellectual material, to important intellectual material. ठीक है, तो ये 3 बैरियर्स मेंशन करता है अल-बिरूनी। इसके इन बैरियर्स के अलावा कोई और लिमिटेशंस किताबुल हिंद में क्या, और कुछ? फॉर ऑल हिज इंफॉर्मेशन हु वाज ही डिपेंडेंट अपॉन? ब्राह्मण्स प्राइमरीली। ठीक है, उनके कंट्रोल में, उनके पास जो किताबें थी या तो उनको पढ़ रहा था, और ही वाज टॉकिंग टू द ब्राह्मण्स डायरेक्टली। व्हाट इज गोइंग टू बी द रिजल्ट ऑफ दिस? उसको हिंदुस्तान के बारे में इंफॉर्मेशन अलग अलग नजरियों से मिलेगी, केवल एक ही पर्सपेक्टिव से, ब्राह्मणिकल पर्सपेक्टिव से मिलेगी। और ब्राह्मणिकल सोर्सेज के नेचर के बारे में हमने क्या ऑब्जर्व किया है थ्रू आउट द वेरी बिगनिंग? दैट दीज वर एलीट नॉर्मेटिव टेक्स्ट्स। ठीक है, तो ये आइडियल सिचुएशन को डिफाइन करते हैं। डज दिस नेसेसरली मीन कि ग्राउंड लेवल पे भी वही सारी चीजें हो रही होंगी जो कि इन नॉर्मेटिव टेक्स्ट में डिफाइंड है? नहीं, कोई श्योरिटी नहीं है, कोई गारंटी नहीं है। ठीक है, राइट डाउन। अल-बिरूनी, नेक्स्ट मेन पॉइंट, अल-बिरूनी डिपेंडेड ऑलमोस्ट एक्सक्लूसिवली on Brahmins and their works to understand Indian society, full stop. सब पॉइंट लिखो। Such works are highly idealized normative texts, written from the elite perspective, and do not necessarily reflect the practical reality at the ground level, ठीक है। अच्छा, जितने भी टेक्स्ट थे किस लैंग्वेज के पढ़ रहा था? संस्कृत टेक्स्ट्स are almost exclusively going to belong to which religious community? Hinduism. India में was Hinduism the only religion flourishing at that point of time? No. Buddhism भी था, Jainism भी था। उसके रिगार्डिंग इंफॉर्मेशन यहाँ पे इग्नोर कर दिया गया है। राइट डाउन। नेक्स्ट मेन पॉइंट, ओवर रिलायंस on Sanskrit texts and ignoring non-Sanskrit texts resulted in a lopsided picture of India. Full stop. Al-Biruni automatically ignored Buddhist and Jain literature, Buddhist and Jain literature, and thus his image of India remains incomplete, remains incomplete. ठीक है? And finally you can write reliance upon, next main point, reliance upon secondary information or indirect observation. ठीक है? Now आगे लिखो, it is unlikely that Al-Biruni covered Indian territory beyond the zone of Ghaznavid invasions. Beyond the zone of Ghaznavid invasions. Full stop. As such, his observations regarding different regions and possibly Indian customs was based on hearsay, Full stop. This is, sub point लिखो, this is reflected in the inaccurate geographical information provided by him, and even in his analysis of the Indian society, When did Al-Biruni visit India? Early 11th century. इस पीरियड को नॉर्थ इंडियन हिस्ट्री में क्या नाम से जाना जाता है? राजपूत पीरियड, राइट? बट डज अल-बिरूनी एवर मेंशन द टर्म राजपूत एनीवेयर? कोई मेंशन ही नहीं करता है, ठीक है? दिस वाज वन बिग गैप इन हिज सोशल इंफॉर्मेशन. राइट डाउन. एग्जाम्पल, Al-Biruni makes no mention of the term Rajput, despite their importance and proliferation during this period. Full stop. This indicates his rather bookish approach to understand Indian society. A rather bookish approach to understand Indian society. ठीक है? Is this clear? Next sub point. Al-Biruni's observations regarding Indian polity are also disappointingly insufficient. Full stop. Apart from the Kalachuris, he hardly mentions any North Indian dynasty or the nature of the state, position of the king, administration, taxation or military. ठीक है? So these are some of the limitations of the Kitab-ul-Hind as a source of history. अब एक क्वेश्चन लिख लीजिए. Discuss the importance of the Kitab-ul-Hind as a source of early medieval history. (200 words, 15 marks. In the intro, what are we going to talk about? कैसे शुरू कर सकते हैं? छोटा सा बैकग्राउंड दे सकते हैं किताबुल हिंद का. Who was the author? Where was he from? किस पीरियड में आया? What is the subject matter that he has talked about? ठीक है? तो brief बैकग्राउंड, साथ में इंट्रोडक्शन में और क्या करना चाहिए? You should connect it to the information that you are going to provide immediately after it. ठीक है? तो in the body of your answer, what are the things that we should talk about? Importance of the Kitab-ul-Hind as a source of early medieval history. ठीक है? बॉडी में आपको किस चीज के बारे में बात करनी चाहिए, कैसे इसको डिस्कस कर सकते हो आप? फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल, इट्स स्ट्रेंथ्स. ठीक है? तो आप यहां पे उसकी साइंटिफिक रैशनल अप्रोच के बारे में बात कर सकते हैं, his lack of religious or cultural bias, unbiased approach के बारे में बात कर सकते हैं. We can talk about his intellectual curiosity, which was driving him to compile this work as a real work or scientific work on Indian science, history, etc. Right? And finally, we can talk about the wide array of content that he covers, the themes that he covers, right? Because while doing this, he fills all the gaps left by contemporary literature. तो इस तरह का कोई और इंडिया में वर्क अभी तक एग्जिस्ट नहीं करता था. तो थीम्स में हम क्या क्या बात कर सकते हैं, किसके बारे में बात करता है? ही गिव्स इंपॉर्टेंट डिटेल्स रिगार्डिंग द इंडियन सोसाइटी. व्हाट एल्स? रिलीजन एंड philosophy. What else? Polity. What else? Geography, science, etc. Right? तो हमें इन स्ट्रेंथ्स के बारे में बात करनी है. तो ये जो कनेक्शन बनाना था, यहां पे आप कैसे बनाओगे इंट्रोडक्शन और स्ट्रेंथ्स के बीच में? You will simply write a very simple line. क्या? The Kitab-ul-Hind enjoys several advantages over other contemporary texts due to its strengths, such as ये. ठीक है, केवल इसको डिस्कस कर देने से बात बन जाएगी? नहीं. We have to talk about the importance of the Kitab-ul-Hind as a source of early medieval history. तो स्ट्रेंथ्स बता दिए हैं. अब वीकनेसेस भी बताने पड़ेंगे. वी हैव जस्ट डिस्कस दोज, राइट? वीकनेस बता करके छोड़ दोगे तो नंबर मिलेंगे? नहीं. फाइनली यू विल हैव टू गिव कंक्लूडिंग रिमार्क्स. ठीक है, तो कंक्लूजन में क्या लिखोगे? You should always have awareness of what you have done just before every section. ठीक है, तो सबसे रिसेंटली आपने किसके बारे में बात करी है? वीकनेस के बारे में बात करी है. You cannot end your answer on a negative note. तो वीकनेस पे आप नहीं कर सकते हो. Therefore, you are going to write that in spite of these weaknesses, we cannot deny the immense value of the Kitab-ul-Hind as a source of early medieval history. In fact, it is considered to be the first true historical work in the context of India. ठीक है, Al-Biruni displays a distinct historical consciousness characterized by an analytical approach which distinguishes it from both existing Indian literature as well as the existing Tawarikh literature of the Islamic tradition. ठीक है, तो दोनों इंडियन लिटरेचर के कॉन्टेक्स्ट में और इस्लामिक लिटरेचर के कॉन्सेप्ट में ये एक यूनिक वर्क बन जाता है. एंड हियर इन लाइज इट्स रियल इंपॉर्टेंस, क्योंकि ये इंडियन कंडीशंस को एनालाइज करता है फ्रॉम अ साइंटिफिक पर्सपेक्टिव. So that is why this is especially important. This is the note that we are going to conclude upon. हो जाएगा. फर्स्ट ट्रू हिस्टोरिकल वर्क इसको बोला जाता है. हाँ, राजतरंगिनी वाज 12th century, right? नहीं, फर्स्ट ट्रू हिस्टोरिकल वर्क इन द कॉन्टेक्स्ट ऑफ इंडिया. राजतरंगिनी को फर्स्ट ट्रू इंडियन हिस्टोरिकल वर्क, that means written by an Indian. Al-Biruni, although not Indian, he was writing about India, so it is the first true historical work in the Indian context. ठीक है. Give an account of Al-Biruni's India how does it compare with the contemporary Islamic civilization or Islamic world? Once again, word limit is 200, 15 marks. How does it compare with the contemporary Islamic world? बता रहे हैं. Introduction में what are we going to write about? At Al-Biruni's India, Al-Biruni's Kitab-ul-Hind is considered to be a mirror of 11th century Indian society. It provides us rich details regarding multiple facets of Indian life, including society, religion, philosophy, sciences, polity, geography, etc. A unique feature of Al-Biruni's Kitab-ul-Hind is his comparative analysis. ठीक है. In the main body, what what are we going to do? ये जितने भी fields है ना, इनका dimensional analysis करेंगे. We are going to elaborate upon them. हमेशा word limit के ऊपर ध्यान रखना. You are going to have very limited space for all of this. Maximum 2 या 3 sentences आप लिख सकते हो हर एक dimension के लिए, उससे ज्यादा आपके पास जगह नहीं होगी. सबसे पहला क्या था? Society. Al-Biruni paints a picture of a closed hierarchical caste based and insular society. ठीक है? On the other hand, Islamic society has been described as open and egalitarian. Although Al-Biruni mentions the class-based division of Persian society and consider it similar to the Indian system, right? क्या बोलता है? कितनी classes? 4 classes at the top, princes and soldiers, princes and warriors. उसके बाद priests, उसके बाद professionals and intellectuals, and finally workmen and art cultivators, etc. right? तो ये लिखोगे, आगे बढ़ जाओगे. दूसरा religion. What does he observe? Indian religion? Yeah. Based on the concepts of monotheism, salvation, action, or in fact we can refine it further. He says that Indian religion was characterized by the basic aspect of monotheism, within which salvation was associated with action. ठीक? On the other hand, Islamic monotheism was strictly dualistic. And salvation did not depend upon action. ठीक है? क्या आगे? साइंस. Indian science advanced but stagnant, a mixture of pearls and sour dates. Factors behind stagnation: insularity, superiority and hypocrisy. Islamic science undergoing rapid growth due to the Islamic attitude towards truth, characterized by the concept of al-haq, truthfulness towards truth. Polity and geography. Now यहाँ पे ना कंपैरिजन का स्कोप बहुत ज्यादा है नहीं, ठीक है, बिकॉज ऑल्दो ज्योग्राफी में Indian geography or Indian climate has been mentioned as a mixture of extremes, whereas the climate of Ghazni and Khwarizm has been defined as moderate. उसके अलावा कुछ और बचता नहीं है, ठीक है. But at the same time we can provide some additional information that this was the first instance of contact between these two civilizations in a major way. Since the contact was peaceful or hostile? Hostile. The relations between Islam and Hindu culture were characterized by mutual animosity. ठीक है, तो instead of writing polity and geography ना, we can write cultural awareness, contact and geography. ठीक, so we need to be mindful of the headings and subheadings that we use also. तो accurately represent करना चाहिए जो हम discuss कर रहे हैं उससे, ठीक है. So with this we have covered all the important themes. तो जो dimensional analysis हमें करना था that we have been able to do. अब finally करना है हमें conclusion. So what is the wording of the question? Give an account of Al-Biruni's India. How does it compare with contemporary Islamic world? तो हम क्या बोल सकते हैं? In Al-Biruni's own words, क्या Indian civilization was completely different from Islamic civilization. However, Al-Biruni का major success क्या था? That he had been able to painstakingly make interconnections or identify the similarities between Indian and Islamic civilization. As part of his larger project of acting as a cultural bridge between the two, leading to deeper cultural exchange, and as part of his higher idea of realizing the divine plan, which emphasizes upon the unity of all humankind. In other words, हमने क्या देखा कि कई सारे डिफरेंसेस तो हैं, बट इन इंपॉर्टेंट रिस्पेक्ट्स both the Hindu and Islamic civilizations are quite similar as well. That is the sentiment with which we are going to conclude the answer. ठीक है, तो ये दो इंपॉर्टेंट क्वेश्चंस हैं जहां से मे भी आ सकता है. एक ऑलरेडी यूपीएससी पूछ चुका है, डिस्कस द इंपॉर्टेंस ऑफ किताब-उल-हिंद एज अ सोर्स ऑफ अर्ली मिडिवल हिस्ट्री. वर्डिंग हो सकता है अलग हो, लेकिन क्वेश्चन यही है, आंसर यही होगा उसका. एंड दिस क्वेश्चन हैज नॉट बीन आस्क्ड येट. ये आ सकता है, इससे मिलता जुलता कोई क्वेश्चन आ सकता है. सो डू प्रैक्टिस बोथ ऑफ दीस. गिवन अकाउंट ऑफ Al-Biruni's India, हाउ डज इट कंपेयर विद द कंटेम्परेरी इस्लामिक वर्ल्ड? राइट नाउ अर्ली मिडिवल इंडिया में एक आध चीजें और बचती हैं. फॉर एग्जाम्पल दी चोलास. इसके अलावा और कुछ बचता है अर्ली मेडिवल इंडिया में? आई थिंक दिस इज गोइंग टू बी द लास्ट थिंग दैट वी हैव टू कवर. आप लोगों को मैंने लिखवाया था शायद लिस्ट, उसमें अगर और कुछ बचता होगा ना तो प्लीज लेट मी नो. बट मंडे को हमारी नेक्स्ट क्लास, सॉरी नेक्स्ट वीक हमारी नेक्स्ट क्लास होगी. टुमारो, डे आफ्टर एंड द डे आफ्टर दैट 8th 9th एंड 10th ऑप्शनल की क्लास नहीं हो पाएगी. ठीक है, पहले हम लोग प्लान कर रहे थे कि ऑनलाइन मोड में हो जाएगा, बट बाद में बात करने के बाद निकल के आया पॉसिबल नहीं है. ठीक है, तो कल और परसों आपकी ऑप्शनल की क्लास नहीं होगी. जीएस क्लासेस यू आर गोइंग टू हैव. ठीक है, तो चोलास के बाद देयर आर सम मिसलेनियस एस्पेक्ट्स ऑफ एंशिएंट इंडिया जो हमारे बीच में रह गए थे, जैसे कि साइंस, सम एब्स्ट्रैक्ट आइडियाज अबाउट द पोजीशन ऑफ वुमेन इन अर्ली मिडिवल इंडियन सोसाइटी. राइट, ये सारी चीजें हमको डिस्कस करनी पड़ेंगी. इंडियाज कॉन्टैक्ट विद द आउटसाइड वर्ल्ड. तो एक क्वेश्चन फॉर एग्जांपल रेज किया गया था, इंडियाज इम्पैक्ट ऑन साउथ ईस्ट एशिया एंड साउथ ईस्ट एशियन कल्चर. वो सारी चीजें हम डिस्कस कर सकते हैं आफ्टर द चोलास. ठीक है, with that we are going to wrap up with ancient India. फिर पेपर 1 के पार्ट 2 में चलेंगे, medieval India में आ जाएंगे. ठीक है, ऑलराइट, तो दैट इज इट फॉर टुडे. आज की क्लास में कोई डाउट्स?